Well, hi there. Welcome to Darin's Kitchen. Today, we're going to learn about slicing and dicing. It's a little knife handling 101. Before we get started, let's go through our objective. We're going to learn about the knives that can be used, the cutting surface that we should be utilizing, and then some of the items which we're going to cut, because depending on our recipe, will always depend on the item and how we'll be cutting it. We start with looking at what kind of surface we're going to be using. We're not going to use this hard surface here to cut on. We're going to be using a cutting board. Plastic or a wooden cutting board is the best, easiest to clean. One of the ways we in the kitchen make sure our cutting boards don't go anywhere, we always get a wet paper towel, we put it down, and then we put our cutting board on top. That way it's going to be really nice and secure. Next we'll move on to the knives. Please always remember that a sharp knife is a safe knife. The sharper the knife, the safer it is because it will go through the item, be able to cut the material that you have, and your knife's not going to slide off the vegetable or whatever else you're cutting and possibly hurt you. We also don't like it how it would tear the tomato or possibly something else. This is a paring knife. It's one of the smaller knives. It's easy to handle. We could use it for going ahead and trimming down something, or it's real simple to use. It's lightweight and easy. Or we have one of our more popular knives out today. This is what they call a chopping knife. It's real small, it's easy, you see them on all the shows, because a nice flat end here and a round on the top. We have a 8-inch one, we also have a 4-inch one. I like using it depending on what I will be cutting. But my most favorite knife that I'm going to use is going to be my 8-inch chef knife. The knife fits well in my hand, and it's also very easy to use. When you grab a knife, you don't use the knife at the back end of the knife and hold it cut like this. What you're going to be doing is moving your hand up so it's securely on the blade. I use the back end of this blade right here, so we call a kick in the back of the blade, so my hand can be securely against it. Also on the other side too, you see on my forefinger, index finger is pushing against that kick. When I go to cut, I don't just cut like this. I'm going to use a rocking motion, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure that this knife is secure all the time. I also look at my hands, we'll discuss that in a second. Let's talk about some of the items we're going to cut today. I'm going to use this really nice yellow squash. One thing you notice, the yellow squash is kind of rolling. We don't want something rolling around when we're cutting it. We want to make sure we can secure it. The way we do this, we grab it with our hand. And I'm going to use my left hand here, and I go ahead and firmly grab and push down on the squash. Now, if I have my fingers out like this, I easily could cut them off. So we pull our fingers up, secure it, and then we push our fingers here forward, creating a brace, and also a little guide so that my knife can work. I'm going to take off my end right here. Now I'm going to pull my fingers to the end, and you'll see as I'm going to put the blade down, I can go ahead and make my slices. I don't have to look, because all I'm doing is moving my fingers, and the knife sits against my fingers, and all these nice little circles come rolling off. Now as you get better at this, some people like to chop really high. The problem with doing this is you're bringing your knife way above your fingers. If it's down, I will make sure I don't have to worry about that. If I want to do a different kind of cut, I also can go ahead and cut this and turn it to the flat side. Then I'm going to trim this off, get nice straight pieces here, and as I'm securely just pushing down. I can also just turn and do the exact same motion, put this together, and I'll make just a little trim. So now I'm making long, lengthy pieces of squash. And finally, I can do these. Keep going if I wish to, and make little tiny dices. And I will dice with the same motion I did before all the squash up. Okay. Great. So that is some basic of slicing. We're doing a little bit of dicing, different ways of handling the product. We're going to clean up here and we'll move on to our next item. Now, the more we do, the more practice you have in the kitchen, the better and more comfortable you're going to feel. A lot of us use a knife to pick up our items, push them in, just because it's nice and even. You work this all the time. You're always using your knife. It's easy to grab and make sure you have all the products. Next thing we're going to get into is your basic onion. Our onions are almost in most of the dishes we have today. Remember, look at your recipe. Know how you have to cut your item first. Do I have to have slices from the recipe? Do I need to dice it? So it does matter. So I'm going to do first thing, I'm going to take my onion, and I'm going to cut it in half. And I'm just going to peel it. Take this off. Now you'll see I kept the back end of this on for the onion. That allows my onion to stay together. It's actually sometimes very much easier to work with. Now you can always cut that off at any point in time, but obviously we'll just leave it on during the cutting process. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this into dicing. When you dice an onion, you make sure that you don't cut all the pieces and then try to do more dicing. What we do is we take our cutting, you'll see, I'm not cutting all the way through. It's about 7/8 of the way through. I'm going to cut down, you'll see how this is all going to stay together. Once again, my finger motions here in my left hand are always exactly the same. Now as I cut through this, all the way through, my onion is still together. I'm able to turn it on its side, and I do this cut mark right here, which will then increase the amount of chopping that does in one big swoop. As I come through, my onion is going to be diced, and I quickly have now just diced an onion. Really finely, it's excellent. Real quickly done, it's nice and then of course I can just take the ends here, cut off wherever I don't want. Okay, so that's dicing an onion. Very quick, it's easy. I don't know how much my recipe is going to ask for, but that's a really easy way to cut. That's half an onion we just did within less than 30 seconds. Next thing we're going to move on to would be the idea of what do we need to do for something like parsley. This is Italian flat parsley. It's one of my most favorite parsleys I'll use. Number one, it's very flavorful, really aromatic. It's easy to cut since it is flat. It's not as much leafy as some of those other parsleys. So what I'm going to do is take the parsley here. I'm going to take a couple pieces off like this. Then I'm going to wrap them together to a little bunch like this here. And then I'm going to take my knife and we're going to chop them. Once again, the exact same hand motion I've had before. Now this is chopped, and you'll say, this is really kind of like a coarse chopping. It's not real fine, depending on what your recipe has. If you just want to put it on the top of something at the end, you don't want to have a lot of flavor in there, this may be the way you go. Also what we'll do is if I want to chop this and mince it up really well, I'll bundle it together still once again, and I will do a rocking motion. A lot of people will do it this way on top, because this will allow my hand to rock even better, faster, and I can move really quickly. But one thing you don't want to do when you chop is this. Sounds a lot of fun, but it's really not, because I just made a mess. In the kitchen, obviously, we don't want to be cleaning up all the time. Keep everything on your cutting board you can, and just do your chopping. This allows us to get our minced parsley up very quickly, very easily. And wow, can you smell that? I wish you could. It really smells great. I can't wait to add this to my pasta. I'm just going to put this away. Now, you never want to cut too much parsley at once. So it's not like something you can cut, store, and come back and get. You lose a lot of the freshness right away. So if you're really going to be working with parsley, I just highly advise you to get only what you need, utilize it, and then go from there. You can always cut more. Now from there, what we just learned is we learned how to chop, we learned how to cut, we learned about knife handling, what kind of surface we should be cutting on, and really, it comes down, it is knife cutting safety 101. That's what we learned today here at Darin's Kitchen. Now next week, we're going to learn a little bit more, a little more advanced skills. I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks so much for coming. Bye now.